If you haven't done so already, you need to have the whole back of your reference covered in graphite. Graphite's just in a pencil or a graphite stick. We want to find some sort of texture or color that we want to use. I'm going to be going in on the smoke that you see at the top of my reference, taping things down at opposite corners. It's very important that the papers are not like slipping and sliding while you're tracing stuff. So, as long as we use this approach, we do not need to guess at different shapes and sizes of things. We can just trace the exact lines that we need and cut them out. It's a little tricky to see the lines sometimes, so I use the glare from the light, and you kind of tilt your head, find the angle, and then while you can see the lines with the glare, you're making the cuts. This is a little trick I like to use for clean cuts. I am placing my thumb directly behind the blade. You don't need to worry about cutting yourself or anything because it's the dull side over there. But as you make each cut, you just keep pressing the thumb right behind it. This keeps the paper nice and flat and gives you really, really clean cuts. This next part is specifically for bold outlines and line work. So I am finding just some black magazine, tracing those lines, cutting those out. And this is going to help me avoid cutting up a ton of tiny little lines and gluing tiny little black pieces everywhere. Just cut out a whole section of black and then you slightly offset those. And now by overlapping layers, we get some really, really clean line work. Look at my reference over there on the left. There's so many black lines everywhere. I would drive myself insane trying to cut out a whole bunch of tiny little black lines. Next up, we have the stencil technique. All the different stuff I'm showing you guys, you might not be able to use all of them, but hopefully there's a couple techniques in here you can use. Tracing things out, cutting things out. Look at the pencil lines. They are going outside of the blue a little bit. Once again, using the glare to find the lines. And sometimes it's important to cut out large sections a bit larger than they appear on the reference. Because remember, we're constantly overlapping things. If you are just placing things next to each other, you're going to get all these tiny little awkward gaps in between your pieces. So I'm going to be going ahead and taping this down. Now, stay with me now. This one is a little bit tricky to understand. But instead of cutting out a tiny little yellow moon, I'm going to be cutting out the crescent moon shape from the blue night sky. And this creates a stencil. And now that I have my stencil cut out, I just find some yellow paper. And this is going to give me a really, really clean result. Also allows me to use less glue. You'll find when we're gluing small little pieces, the glue gets like really, really messy sometimes. So now that I line up that yellow, I tape it all down, and I'm putting together this whole section separately. Then I throw down a whole bunch of glue across the back on top of the tape and everything. And now I'm able to add that entire section into my piece. On to the last part here, third and final technique. This can be found on the end of any regular number 2 pencil. And this is super helpful for gradients. Anywhere you have a gradient that goes from light to dark, You can see it in the top section. I used it to blend out the light blue into the white of the sky. You can just slightly erase a little bit of the color on the magazine, and it will turn it a lighter color. And if you keep on erasing, it ends up turning it white. This technique is super useful anywhere that you have a sky or like a very painterly looking gradient. In my sky, as the light blue fades to white, it worked out perfectly there. So take a close look at your reference and ask yourself, is there anywhere that you might use this technique? Here's another student example. Something to keep in mind throughout today. Collage. It is a very weird way of working and thinking. So if you use some new weird techniques, it'll probably look better.